I will say good morning. It is a tremendous host to be able to continue in our beautiful journey in Sanhedrin together. And apologize that I can't be there with you in person, but Baruch Hashem, at least we're able to learn virtually together. So today's daf is Chaf Aleph 21, and we're continuing in these incredible Gemaras. We are picking up on Chaf Amud Beis 20b by the sugya of Shlomo HaMelech, Amar Reish Lakish, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines up from the bottom. Amar Reish Lakish, Reish Lakish said as follows: B'tchila Malach Shlomo Ala Yonim. Beginning Shlomo HaMelech, his dominion, his monarchical reign was so vast that he ruled even over the Shamayim, right? Even the Elyonim, which means even the Malachim. Obviously, the Ribbon Shalom controls everything in the world, but the idea is that Shlomo HaMelech had this shlita, he had this level of dominion even upon angelic beings. Shnei Amar Vayashav Shlomo al Kisei Hashem. Then Shlomo suffered a setback. Now remember again, this Gemara is very much tied into what is the incredible Gemara Maseches Gittin with Ashmadai, where Shlomo HaMelech again has this incredible battle with Ashmadai, the king of the demons, and he's dispossessed from his throne. Now whether that story is literal, or like the Maharal tries to understand that it's metaphorical, the idea is that Shlomo HaMelech suffered a setback at a certain point during his reign. So in the beginning, he ruled even over the Elyonim. Then, at a certain point, it was diminished, and he only ruled over the Tachtonim, which is again the lower world. Shneimar kihu rodeh b'chol ever hanar mitifsach va'ad Gaza. So he ruled again from Tifsach until Gaza. So Rav Ushmuel Chadamar Tifsach b'sofa olam va'az b'sofa olam. So one opinion says Tifsach is on one side of the world, and Gaza is on the other side of the world, and so he ruled from Tifsach to Gaza. V'chad Amar Tifsach ba'aza b'hadi adadi havu yasu. Other opinions said, no, Tifsach and Gaza are literally right next to each other. Ukashem shamalach al Tifsach va'al Gaza, kach malach al kol olam kulo. And the same way that he ruled on Tifsach and Gaza, because they are right next to each other, so too Shlomo ruled over the entire world. Again, the idea is really the same, which is Shlomo ruled over the entire world. Basof lo malach al Yisrael. Then he suffered a downgrade, and he was only the ruler over Klal Yisrael. Shnei Amar ani koheles hayisi melech al Yisrael. Then afterwards, he only ruled over Yerushalayim. Shnei Amar Divrei Koheles Ben David Melech BiYerushalayim. Ulebasof LaMalach Al Mitaso. So after again further diminution, then he only ruled over his bed. Shnei Amar Hinei Mitaso Shel Shlomo. Ulebasof, and in the end, Lo Malach Ela Al Maklo. He only ruled over his own staff. Shnei Amar Zeh Haya Chalki Mikol Amali. This is what I have left after all of my efforts. Rabbi Shmuel Chadamar Maklo. One opinion says it refers to his staff. The Chadamar Gundo. Others say it refers to his cloak. So the idea over here is very dramatic Gemara that Shlomo HaMelech began his reign with like this vast empire of influence, and by the time he gets to the end of his life, really the only thing he's ruling over, or I should get to the end of his life, but when he gets to a certain low point, he's ruling over his just his cloak or just his staff. So then this gives rise to another discussion. Hadar alo hadar. Did Shlomo HaMelech regain his former glorious standing or not? Rabbi Shmuel says, Machlokes Rabbi Shmuel, Chad Amar Hadar. One opinion says, yes, he regained his former standing. Bechad Amar Lo Hadar. The other opinion says, no, he did not regain his former standing. Man Amar Lo Hadar, Melech V'Hedyot. So the opinion that says that he did not regain his former standing, Shlomo started as a Melech, he started as a great man, and he ended up as a Hedyot. Now, Hedyot literally means a simple person. Of course, it doesn't literally mean simple person. What it means is he never really regained that full scope of the monarchical standing. Uman da Amar Hadar Melech V'Hedyot Umelech. But the opinion that says that he did regain his standing, he was a king, then he became, so to speak, a commoner, and then he regained his monarchical footing again. Let's say a really profound Gemara. So again, like I said, this really links in with the Gemara Maseches Gittin about Shlomo HaMelech's struggles with Ashmadai, the king of Shadim, but it's also just a tremendous metaphor for life. The nature of life is no one ever always remains on top. Life is a series of peaks and valleys. So that's lesson number one. Even Shlomo HaMelech, who began again ruling over everything, even in the celestial sphere, has his ups and has his downs. Such is the nature of life. Sometimes we have these expectations that are always going to be riding high, that are always going to be successful. But the truth is not true. No one, even Shlomo HaMelech doesn't have that. Everyone, great people, regular people, everyone has the ups and downs. There's another piece also that's fascinating. There's a beautiful idea attributed to the sons of the Divrei Chaim. The Divrei Chaim says, when I was young, I dreamt that I thought I would change the world. As I got a little bit older, I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna change my country. I got a little bit older, I said I'll try to change my city. Got a little bit older, so I'll try to change my family. And then I said, I'm an old man and I realized the only thing I can really change in this world is myself. You know, a really overwhelming idea that almost, again, at the end of the day, it's true, we have so many different spheres of influence, but sometimes you can impact, sometimes you can't impact. Sometimes, again, you know, in order to have an impact, so the people or the entity on the other side have to be willing to receive that impact. If they're not willing, you could give off as much as you want, but it's not going to work. So Dan Sanzurov was saying, you know, I was a young man, and I think every person thinks this, young person, I'm going to change the world. And then as you get older, you realize that the truth is the only thing you really have control over is yourself. And I think that's also the metaphor. This is, you know, Shlomo Melech begins life, you know, focusing on ruling over and impacting and affecting change in the celestial sphere. And then when he gets older, he's like, you know what? I'm going to affect change on my cloak, on my staff. And that's not a failure. That's not a failure. It's a recognition that at the end of the day, the only thing we really control in this world is who and what we become. Everything else is beyond our control. I could do the best for my kids, but they're going to make their own decisions. I could do the best for my kehillah, they're going to make their own decisions. I could do the best for my company. Again, there's other circumstances. So we all have our different circles of influence. But at the end of the day, you can't really control the outcome. The only thing you really control in this world, Shlomo Melech teaches us, is your staff and your cloak, meaning yourself. That you control. You decide the kind of person you want to be. You decide the kind of life you want to live. You decide your own narrative. Everything else can't necessarily control, but you, absolute control. Incredible. This is reminiscent of the Gemara, also in yesterday's daf, that the first thing that Klal Yisrael had to do when they came into Eretz Yisrael was establish a king. Melech. Som tasim olecha melech. Make yourself a king on you. All right, let's go weiter. Poritz lasos lo derech. So remember, the Mishnah said that the king has a right, and like eminent domain, the king has a right to go ahead and seize land in order to create a pathway to his property, to his palace. So interesting Gemara. Otros malacham lemelech. So in general, when the king goes out to battle and conquers another nation, so any royal treasuries that are seized from the subdued nation, they go to the king, and then the rest of the spoils is split equally between the king and the populace. So it makes sense that when a king conquers another nation, the king gets to keep the royal treasuries of the conquered nation. But how do you know the rest of the spoils, right? The rest of the spoils, that half goes to the king and half goes to the nation. Where do you get that concept? From Shabbos Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph 21a, because the pasuk says Vayimshechu LaHashem l'nagid u'letzadok. Because again, the pasuk over is talking about Shlomo Melech. When Shlomo Melech was anointed as king, so Tzadok was anointed as Kohen Gadol. So what do you see from this pasuk? Makish Nagid Af. So Makish Nagid l'Tzadok. So the Navi is comparing the Nagid, the king, to the Kohen Gadol. Mat Tzadok Mechzalo Mechzala Echov. So just like by the Kohen Gadol, half goes to him and half goes to the other Kohanim. Af Nagid Mechzalo Mechzala Achib. So too by the king, half goes to him and half goes to the rest of the nation. Well, how do you know that half goes to the Kohen Gadol? Where did you get that from? The sign Rabbi Omer Va'isali Aaron Ulabanov Mechzali Aaron Mechzalaban, because the pasuk is speaking about again the Kohanic gifts, says it will be to Aaron and his sons. So he dashed from there, half goes to Aaron and half goes to his sons. Incredible. Okay, so Gemara says as follows. Mishnah says as follows. Lo yarlo noshim ela shmona esrei. So the Mishnah says as follows, that halacha l'maisa. So remember, the king can marry, but he can't marry more than 18 wives. Rabbi Yehuda says, marbahu lo u'bavat shelo yeh masiros l'sliba. Rabbi Yehuda says he could have as many. Sounds like what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is he could have as many wives as he wants, as long as they do not turn his heart away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabbi Shimon says, afilu achas u'masiros l'sliba harei lo yisa'ena. So Rabbi Shimon says, no. If you're going to have a wife that turns his heart away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even one wife he's not allowed to have like that. So the Gemara says, Im kain lama nemar lo yarba lo noshim. So why does the pasuk have to say he should not have too many wives? Dafilu kavigayel. Even if like Avigal was one of the wives of David HaMelech, who was a tremendous tzaddikus. So even if the king's wives are incredibly righteous, he's still capped at 18. Still capped at 18. Okay. Says the Gemara the Memra, the Rabbi Yehuda Darsh Time Dikra. So I say from this Mishnah, it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda darshans the reasoning behind psukim, right? Because what Rabbi Yehuda said in the Mishnah? So the Mishnah says a king shouldn't have more than 18 wives, and Rabbi Yehuda says he could have many wives as long as they don't turn his heart against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda is darshaning the reason, or is why does the Torah say that a king should not have too many wives? Again, the pasuk itself says so they should not turn his heart against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I've Rabbi Shmuel Silber, and it sounds like Rabbi Shimon, right? Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah doesn't darshan the reasoning for psukim. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, but yet we find the opposite is true. The Sanyo, we learned, this is an interesting halacha, Amona bein shiania bein shiashira, an almana, a widow, whether she is poor or whether she is rich, you cannot seize collateral from her. Shene Amar, lo sachbol beged almana divid Rabbi Yehuda. Right, the Torah says, you are not allowed to seize the garment of a widow as collateral. And Rabbi Yehuda says it makes no difference if she's wealthy, if she's poor. Torah says you can't seize the garment of a widow as collateral. Rabbi Shimon says, Ashira mamashkinanosa, aniya emashkinosa. Rabbi Shimon says, not true. A poor widow you can't, but a rich widow you can. And again, the logic would be that a rich widow, it doesn't matter if he sees her property, who cares? Right? She has other stuff. A poor widow is where it's going to be problematic. Because why? What's the issue? With a poor widow, if you seize her property, right, you seize her garment, you're going to have to give it back to her. So what's going to happen? Every day you're going to come to her house, you're going to take it, then you're going to come back and give it to her. And what's going to happen? So what's going to happen is it's going to start rumors, because if people see that there's a man coming to the widow's house every single day, people don't know that there's a collateral issue, but rather they're just going to assume that something illicit is going on over here. So because you're going to take collateral from her and you have to return the collateral, because that's the halacha, right? If you take something as collateral and the person needs the collateral, you're obligated to return it. So if you take it from a poor widow, you're going to have to go and return it to her every single day, and it's going to cause rumors. So what do you see from here? Rabbi Yehuda lo darsh time dikra, Rabbi Shimon darsh time dikra. So it's conscious we just said before. So right, Rabbi Shimon is one who darshans. Rabbi Shimon is one who darshans the reasoning behind psukim, and Rabbi Yehuda does not. This contradicts our Mishnah, to which the Gemara says you're right. But Rabbi Yehuda lo darsh time dikra. In reality, in general, Rabbi Yehuda does not address the reasoning behind psukim. He doesn't do that. So why does he do it over here by the king? No, because here, there's just, we'll say, what does it mean when we say Rabbi Yehuda doesn't darshan the reasoning behind mitzvahs? Is that he doesn't look for reasons behind mitzvahs. Kadosh Baruch Hu says something, we do it. Here, by the wives and the king, it's different. The Torah says explicitly that why shouldn't the king have too many wives? Lo yarba lo nashim. Why? Because Shema Yasser Levav, because they may turn his heart. So it's not darshan in time of the Dikra. The pasuk itself says it. Matam lo yarba lo nashim. Why can't the king have too many wives? The Torah says v'lo delo Yasser Levavo, so that his heart should not be turned away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon Michti, Ba'amar Darshina time Dikra. In general, we darshan the reasoning for psukim. Im king lichtov kra lo yarbalo nashim lishtok. So just let the Torah say about the king, he shouldn't have too many wives, and that's it. And I would have understood why can't he have too many wives. We're concerned that they're going to turn his heart away from the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Va'ana amina matam lo yarba mishum lo yaser. I would have understood it intuitively why a king can't marry too many wives. It makes a lot of sense. A king would also be marrying for the purpose of creating political strategic allegiances, which could ultimately again lead him to link up, with queens or with women or with countries that are not good, right? Don't have a proper spiritual influence. So Rabbi Shimon says like this: let the Torah just say the king can't marry too many women. And I would have understood why, because we're concerned that they're going to turn his heart away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I could have intuited that. So since I could have intuited it, why does the Torah feel the need to say it? Lo yasser lan, why do you have to say it? Rabbi said the Gemara said, Lo yasser lan ali, afilu achas umasiras libo hareza lo yesa'eno. Because it's going to teach us that even one wife, if the wife is going to turn the king away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the king is not allowed to marry her. So in other words, even if he's within, we'll call it the permitted allotment of wives, But if that wife is going to have a negative spiritual influence, then the king is not permitted to marry her. So why does the pasuk say don't have too many wives? To teach us even if the king is marrying someone righteous, a righteous woman, right? Still, he should not have too many wives. Okay. So the Gemara says. So now the Mishnah capped the number of wives that a king is permitted to marry at 18. So the Gemara says, so where do you get that from? How do you know 19? So the Gemara says, this is very interesting. Vayuldu David banim bechevron. So David HaMelech had sons in Hebron, and now the Torah the Navi goes through his sons. First of the widest lines. Amnon la'Achinam Yisraelis. So firstborn was Amnon to his wife Achinam Yisraelis. Umishneu Kilav la'Avigail. Second son was Kilav, born to Abigail. Eishes Naval Hakareli. Vashlishis Avshalom ben Ma'acha. Third son was Avshalom, the son of Ma'acha. Haravias Adoniah ben Chagis. Fourth son was Adoniah ben Chagis. Hachamishi Shefatya ben Avital. The fifth son was Shefatya, the son of Avital. Vashishi Yisrael le'egla Ishes David. Okay, sixth son Yisrael. Ella Yoldu leDavid bechevron. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Ela Yoldu leDavid bechevron. So now these are the sons, six sons born to six wives to David in Hebron. The Kambalei Navi, and the Navi says to David, Ima'at va'osifa lecha kahina v'chahina. If these are too few for you, you could add on like these and like these. So remember again, so in Ma'at, if these, he was married to 6 women, if you need more wives, you could add on like these and like these. So the first unit was 6, you could add on 2 more units of 6 for a total of 18. So the Gemara says, Kahinashis, v'kahinashis, dahavaluhu tamni sari. Fine, 18. So maskif Ravina, ima kahina tarti sari, v'kahina esrin v'arba. So I'll understand, maybe it's like this. Maybe kahina means 12. And therefore it turns out that he could really marry a total of 24 wives. In other words, add the units together. To which the Gemara says, you're right, that supports that. Lo yarba lo nashim, yosem esrim v'arba. So the Gemara says, okay, so there is a brisa that seems to support that reading that says you cannot go ahead and marry more than 24 wives. So the Gemara says, leman de dar shvav. So according, if you also darshan, it says, Ima'at v'osifa lecha kahina v'chahina. There's a vav in there. If you darshan the vav, then arba mushmona, be 2 units of 24. So the Gemara says, that supports that as well. Lo yarba lo noshim yoser me arba mushmona. Okay, so just to point out, there are other brises, and these other brises ultimately quote these opinions that say that halacha l'maisa, the king could even marry up to 48 wives. So Tana Didan, my time is. So what's the reason of our Tana who caps it at 18? Amrav Kana, makish kahina basra le kahina kamo. We equate the second kahina, the last kahina, with the first kahina. Ma kahina kama shis, just like the first unit of kahina is 6. Af kahina basra shis. So to the second unit, the last unit of kahina is also 6. So halacha l'maisa, again, the Gemara says, this is the view in our Mishnah, the king is permitted to marry a total of 18 wives. The ha-havi Michal. But one second, the Navi records 6 wives, but there was a seventh. What about Michal? We read yesterday's daf. What about Michal? So it's incredible. Amarav Egla zu Michal. So the wife named Egla in the psukim that we quoted before, that was actually Michal. But Lama Nikrishma Egla. So why was she called Egla? Shechaviva alav ke Egla, because she was beloved as to her husband as a calf. So again, this must have been it sounds strange to us, but it must have been, and do not try this at home, but it must have been a biblical term of endearment. To call someone, an Egla, my little Egla, my beloved Egla. So again, like I said, this will go very badly for you if you try to implement this. But Lamaisa, this was the term of endearment. V'chein, hu omer, lule charashtem Eglasi. So the Gemara just brings a raya that Shimshon also referred to his wife as an Egla as well. Okay. One second. But did Michal have children? But we learned yet the pasuk says that Michal, the daughter of Shaul, who was the wife of David HaMelech, did not have a child until the day of her death. So the Gemara says she never had children. No, what it means is she didn't have children for most of her life, but as she got to the end of life, i.e. to her death, she actually had a child right before she passed away. So Michti, one second, here's the problem with that. Michti, but one second. The Navi over here is taking like a census, so to speak, of David HaMelech's family when they're in Hebron. Now, as we're going to see for just a moment, Michal was punished to not have children as a result of the time that when they brought the Aron, when they brought the ark to one of its resting places in Yerushalayim, this was right before the Beis Hamikdash was built, obviously. So David HaMelech was dancing with all of his heart and all of his soul in front of the Aron. Michal thought that he was acting in an immature way, and she disparaged him. And as a result, for that act of disparagement, she's punished by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to die childless. So that happened in Yerushalayim. Remember, so David HaMelech, the first 5 years of his reign were in Hebron. This is where there was dispute. We saw this yesterday's daf, right? Because when Shaul died, so Mephibosheth, Shaul's son, claimed the throne for his own. During those years, David HaMelech was not going to go to war with Mephibosheth. He had a smaller monarchy set up in Hebron. So the listing of the family we just saw before was in Hebron, but yet Michal was punished in Yerushalayim. D'chsevu Michal b'ashal nishkafa ba'adachal v'teres hamelach David mefazes u'mechaker lefnei Hashem v'tavos Rabbi Yehuda v'tim Rabbi Yosef shaklasa Michal l'mitrefasa. Michal got her punishment ala ema ad da'osa ma'isa hayala. Rather, what it means is like this: up until this event, she had children. In other words, Michal had children already. Mikan ve'elach lo hayala. After she disparaged David HaMelech for dancing with the Aron, or dancing in front of the Aron, so after that point, she was not given any more children. But one second, but the pasuk says that David HaMelech took additional wives and additional concubines in Yerushalayim. No. That means to round out the number 18. In other words, David HaMelech did not marry more than 18 women. So Gemara says, by the way, my nashim, my pilakshim, what's the difference between wives and pilakshim and concubines? Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, nashim beksuva, ubekidushin, pilakshim below ksuva, below kidushin. Wives have a ksuva and kiddushin, formal kiddushin. Pilakshim do not have kisuva and do not require formal kiddushin. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, arba meos yeladim haylo David, the kulan b'nei yifas toar hayus. We'll say this is incredible. David HaMelech had 400 children that he fathered with yifas toar, war brides. Actually, dramatic. We'll say now whether or not that number is probably hyperbolic, right? But representing the idea that he had a number of children with war brides. So Gemara says, listen to this. Umegadli beloras hayu, and again, so remember there was a hairstyle that the Ovdei Avodah Zarah beloris, which is like they would let the back of their hair grow long, or cut the rest, let the back of their hair grow long, and that was like a siman of like Ovdei Avodah Zarah. So listen to this. Now remember, so there's a whole discussion exactly, were these children Jewish, not Jewish? The Kulan Yoshim Bikran Shalzav, and they all went around in chariots or carriages of gold. And they led the platoons of the army. And these were the strongest soldiers of David HaMelech's home. So we'll say so. What's really incredible about this? So David HaMelech, so apparently he allowed. So it sounds like they weren't Jewish, because remember again, the soldier has the right to engage in the first act of relations with the Yifas Toar before the conversion process. So if that's the case, if she gives birth, the child's not Jewish. So it sounds like David HaMelech again, but they were his biological sons. He utilized them in his army, and they were the fiercest of his warriors. Incredible. But remember, Yehuda Amarav, Tamar bas Yifas Toar Haisa. Tamar, who was the daughter of David HaMelech, was the daughter of a Yifas Toar. Now, if you take a look at Rashi says Tamar, Achos Avshalom, she was the sister of Avshalom. It's going to be important in just a moment. Bas Yifas Toar Haisa, Kodem Shenis Gaira, Belev Shalim, Ma'acha Imo Yoldolo David Es Tamar, Bahaisa Etzlo B'Toras Yifas Toar. So interestingly enough, so Tamar was the daughter of Ma'acha. Ma'acha was a war bride. So apparently Ma'acha gave birth to Tamar before she converted. Okay? So Tamar was the daughter of Yifas Toar. Shene'emar Ba'ata Daber Na'ala Melech, Kilo Yimne'eni Mimecha. So this is one of the darkest stories in the household of David HaMelech. David HaMelech had a son, Amnon, and Amnon desperately desired his biological half-sister, Tamar, and he violated her. Now, as he was getting ready to violate her, she pleaded with him not to violate her. And he said, if you just ask the king to marry me, he'll let you marry me. So the Gemara says, how could that be? How could Amnon, the son of David, marry Tamar, the daughter of David. It must have been that because she was a daughter of a Yifas Toar, then technically speaking, she would have been permitted to Amnon. Okay, so the Gemara says, Amnon reo shmo Yonadav ben Shama, Achi David, Ish Chacham. So now the Gemara goes back into the Amnon story. So Amnon had a friend, and his name was Yonadav, and Yonadav was very wise. Now, what does it mean, very wise? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Ashi, Ish Chacham l'Rasha. He was wise in evil ways. In other words, he unfortunately, again, knew how to make terrible things happen. So remember, again, this friend, so Amnon tells this friend that he's madly in love with this Tamar. Now, he's not madly in love, he's madly in lust. And this guy, Yonadav, this friend, tells him, here's what you should do. Pretend you're sick. Tell your father that you want Tamar to come and give you food. And when you're secluded with her, do what you want with her. This is the crazy advice that his friend Yonadav gave him. So, Vayomer, Dua atakacha dal ben amelech, Vayomer lo Yonadav shachav amishkavcha vaschel. Ag va'asta le'inei habriach, vatikach hamishares vatitzok lefonov. So what happens? So again, he hatches this whole plan. Pretend like you're sick. So again, Yonadav tells Amnon, pretend like you're sick. Tell the king that you need Tamar to come and go ahead and give you food. So what's going to happen? Rabbi Yehuda Amar she'asta lo minei tigun. So he requested fried food. And that's interesting. It actually points out something very interesting that, again, it doesn't make any sense. If Amnon is sick and he needs food, so let the food be prepared, in the regular whatever kitchens, and let it be brought to him. He said he wanted fried food. So apparently fried food is only good if it's immediately fresh. So he wanted the fried food made right there in his room for him. That's how he was able to lure Tamar to him. So Amnon violates Tamar. He violates her. Afterwards, the Navi says he despised her. After he violated her, so Amnon despised her a great hatred. So my time, what's the reason? So I'm going to Yitzchak Nema Nikshiralov Asa Krushavcha. It's interesting. So apparently, as a result of the act of relations, the violation, so Amnon was caught by one of her pubic hairs, and as a result, he was wounded. He became a krushavcha. Krushavcha refers to a condition where a man can't ejaculate with a straight stream of semen. I don't know the biological, whatever it is that's damaged. Whatever is damaged, something is damaged that prevents the proper ejaculation. Now, when that happens, generally the Torah assumes that a man can't father children. That is a serious issue, and there are limitations as to who that person can marry. So apparently he was rendered a krosh shavcha as a result of his act of relations with Tamar. So the Gemara said, 1 second, why would he be angry at Tamar? She didn't do it purposely, so why would he hate her because of that? Rather, the Gemara says, no, it could be that halacha l'maisa, she did it intentionally to him, to wound him as a result of what it is that he did to her. So is that so? So what does it mean when it says that a beautiful name came about for Klal Yisrael, the women of Klal Yisrael, that their beauty was known? That the Jewish women, again, is during times of the Beis Hamikdash, to a special bracha, that they did not have hair, right, either by the pubic area or by the armpit area. A special bracha. Now, again, it's interesting to see what exactly this means. It was a miracle they didn't have the hair there at all, but yet again, shtei sa'aras, 2 hairs in the pubic region is necessary to establish gadlus, or did they remove it? Not sure. So the Gemara says, so how did Tamar have hair? Then how did she have pubic hair? Tush the Gemara says, Shiny Tamar de bas yifas TORAH. Remember again, as we said before, she was the daughter of Ma'acha. She was not born to a Jewish mother, and as such, she did not have this particular bracha. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Vatikach Tamar efer al rosha. So now, I just want to point out also something amazing. This idea that Amnon violates Tamar and then he despises her. They will say it's so profound, because what is Amnon doing? Amnon is projecting. He's disgusted with himself. Deep down, he's disgusted with himself for what he did. But so often in life, right, we cannot grapple with the mistakes that we have made. So what do? We often project. So for Amnon, he projected his disgust onto Tamar. He wasn't disgusted with her, he was disgusted with himself. But he wasn't strong enough, he wasn't man enough, he wasn't brave enough to deal and to face what he just did, projected those feelings of disgust onto her. So Tamar, the pasuk says, "Vatikach," 3 lines from the bottom. "Vatikach Tamar Ephra al Rasha, ve'esksonas hapasim asher kara." So Tamar put ash on her head. She tore her clothing. So the Gemara says, so Tamar, in an incredible act of bravery, did not hide what happened to her. She made a public spectacle over what happened to her. She let it known. She let it known what happened to her. Tana Mishmei Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, Geder Gadra Tamar Ba'osa Shah. Tamar was incredibly brave, and she did something incredible by publicizing what happened to her. Why? Amru, so because they said, Libnos Malachim Kach, Libnos Hayodos Achas Kama Vakamo. Im Litznos Kach, Leprusas Achas Kama Vakamo. Because it was a shocking wake-up call. That if this could happen to a daughter of David HaMelech, it could happen to anyone. And if it could happen to a young woman who is so modest, it could certainly happen to those who are immodest. So it's almost like Tamar was drawing attention to what happened to her, so that women should be vigilant. Incredible. So as a result of that episode, Gazru, so we'll say Chaf Alpha on base 21, be Gazru ala Yichud ala Pnuya. So it sounds like, so the way according to Rashi to read this is Chazal or Gozer, that you can't have yichud with anyone, not a married woman, not an erva, and not even a single woman. So the Gemara says, one second, yichud daraiso. Yichud is not a rabbinic enactment. Yichud is midaraiso. From where do we know a scriptural allusion to yichud? The pasuk says, if your brother, the son of your mother, will incite you. This is talking about avodah zarah. So the Gemara says, "V'chi ben emesis ben ave no mesis." I don't understand. The son of your mother will incite you to do avodah zarah, but the son of your father doesn't. Rather, it's coming to teach you ben misyachidim imo, that a son ben imecha. This is someone who you would be alone with, who would be alone with you and just your mother. The son could be miyachid. Son could have yichud with his mother. Ve'ein acher misyachidim kol harayos shebetorah, and no one else is permitted to have yichud. Remember again, Abba said the halacha of yichud is one is not allowed to be alone with someone who is an erva to them, someone who is prohibited to them. Gazru al yichud de pinuya. Rather, what it means is, up until that point in time, there was an isser of yichud on a woman who's an erva. But technically speaking, a single man and a single woman, or even a married man and a single woman, that's not an erva. So after the episode with Tamar, they said the laws of yichud apply even to a single woman. Incredible. So we'll say, so now, again, David HaMelech had many challenges in his family. So remember, as David HaMelech lay on his was on his deathbed, dying. So his son Adonio ben Chagis decides to proclaim himself as ruler. Adonio ben Chagis misnaseh lemor ani emloch. David is dying, and his son Adonio takes advantage of David HaMelech's not being well and declares himself the king. So this is incredible. He tried to put on the crown, but he was unable to. Tried to put on the crown of himself. Now, why not? Look at Rashi. It's incredible Rashi. Shebikesh lahoma v'lahomaso shechashav sheteshe berosho kesra malchus. So Adonio tried to put on the crown, but it didn't work. Why? Lefi shahaya sharbit shalza beso chalala midofen ledofen ve'ino misyashav berosho al lemishi yesh lo charitz berosho v'edus lebeis David shekalarai lamalchus homaso mishein. So this is wild. Apparently, the Davidic crown had a bar that went across the top of it. And apparently, the male members of David HaMelech's household, at least those who were fit for monarchy, had an indentation in their skull. So this is when they put on the crown sat on their head. Adonio ben Chagis did not have the indentation. So because he didn't have the indentation, therefore he was unable to put on the crown. Incredible. So Adonio, in a bid to show that he was the next king. So what does he do? He puts chariots and riders and 50 men running in front of him. Myrabu. So what did he do? All of these men, these runners, had their spleens removed. So apparently, spleen removal is good for endurance. Rashi says, so apparently the spleen slows you down. Who knew? So they had their spleens removed in order to make them faster runners, and they also took out some of the nerves from the soles of their feet. They say they were able to run over anything and everything, and nothing could stop them. Incredible. All right, we'll say, I'll also point out something amazing. One of the most overwhelming things is the tragedy and the overwhelming levels of dysfunction that existed in the home of David HaMelech. And I think that it's a profound lesson. The Navi tells us everything. And I think it's a profound lesson on multiple levels. Number one, it tells us that a person can be the greatest tzaddik in the world. It doesn't mean your children are going to be tzaddikim. Right? And just as like a parent could do really everything right, but at the end of the day, children have free will, and sometimes children do the right thing, sometimes they don't. It also tells you that no one escapes familial drama. Even the father of the Mashiach, even the father of the Messianic line, everybody has stuff in their family, and everybody has challenges, and everybody has difficulties. And sometimes, everybody thinks they know that family who has it all together, no problems. And you think they do, but they don't. Every family has their challenges. And by the way, this is why the Torah goes in such depth with all of the stories in the Chumash about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, all the family dynamics that teach us family dynamics are part of life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing anything wrong as a parent. Sometimes it could mean that I'm doing something wrong as a parent. But sometimes I can even be doing everything right as a parent, and still there are family dynamics. Such is the nature of life. Incredible Mishnah. Lo yarba lo susim ela kedei markafto. So the king should not have too many horses, rather just what he needs for his chariots. For markafto means for his needs. Now again, really what that means is like this. What it means for his needs is for his personal needs, whatever it means for his entourage, and of course for the military. So he shouldn't have mowed, he shouldn't have too much gold or silver, rather just what he needs. He should have enough to pay his army. Obviously he has enough what he needs for his own needs and also to pay the army. The Kol Sefer Sofer Torah L'Shmo, and this is beautiful, the king should write his own Sefer Torah. When he goes out to war, he takes the Torah with him. He comes back in from war, he brings the Torah with him. Right? He's sitting adjudicating a case, the Torah is with him. Meisif hi kenegdo, and he's just sitting and reclining, the Torah is there with him. Shne'emar v'haisa imo v'karaba kol yemei chayav. So beautiful. So the king not only writes the Sefer Torah, but he's obligated to take it with him wherever he goes. Beautiful. Says the Gemara. We'll say first of the intermediate wide lines, the Gemara. Tanabanon. Now second, lo yarba lo susim. King should not have too many horses. Maybe he should even limit, what he needs for the army for his own needs. No. In other words, the king should not be excessive in terms of his own needs, but anything he needs militarily, of course, is going to be permitted. Susim habatlonin. This is interesting. Rather, what can't he have? He can't have susim batlanim. What are susim habatlanim? Susim habatlanim are idle horses. Idle horses are horses you just don't use. Don't keep on idle horses. We'll say, it's called, by the way, you see from here, such a profound Musar Haskell, how much Chazal were against batlanus, were against being idle. Idleness is the bane of self-actualization. Idleness is the bane. Idleness is the very undoing of our own personalistic growth, to the point you can't even have idle horses. And if you can't have idle horses, susim batlanim, alachas kama v'kama, you can't be an idle person. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, good, minayin shafilu sus echavu batlo shehu b'lo yarba. You can't even have one idle horse. Talmud lomar leman harbos sus. But again, if you can't even have one idle horse, why does it phrase it in the plural? Susim lamali. This is tell you that you're in violation of a prohibition for every single idle horse that you possess. Incredible. So time of the kasav rachmana low. So the reason is the reason why you're not allowed to, because Torah is low for the king. Halav hachi havamin afilu kidei richbo parashav. The Gemara says nami low. The Gemara says, I would have thought that Allah Lamaisa, had it not said that, I would have thought that maybe the king can't even have too many horses for his army. Therefore, the Gemara says, the Gemara says, no. The only time that there's a prohibition on excess is when it's for the king's own excess. But for the army, he's allowed to have excess. In other words, if he needs a certain amount of reserves for his horses, for his that's totally fine. So in other words, for his own use, he has to be exact. He can't have excess. For the army, totally could have excess. The king can't have excess gold and silver. You might have thought maybe he shouldn't have too much gold and silver even to pay the army. Lo eno marba aval marbahu likadei litan Espana. No, for himself he can't have excess, but of course he needs to have whatever he needs to have in order to pay for the army. So time of the Kasav Rahman lo. The reason he said is because Torah says for him, the king himself can't have excess. That's going to be the problem. Halav hachi, but had it not said this, hava mina fila kedei litan Espana nami lo. I'm gonna thought maybe he can't have excess even for the army. Lo tzricha lahar vacha. Hasha the Amrit Lidrasha, Lo Yabalo Noshim, my drashas bay, Lemeuti Yodas. Well, so now that we have also, so what comes out essentially from both of these ideas is he can't have excess horses for himself, but for the army, fine. He can't have excess gold and silver for himself, but reserves for national needs like the army and other things, that's fine. The Gemara says, by the way, now Lo Yabalo Noshim, my drashas bay, Lemeuti Yodas. Also to teach us is interesting. The prohibition on having more than 18 wives that only applies to the king. Doesn't actually apply to regular people, which is fascinating. So if a regular guy, for some reason, needs more than 18 wives, halacha l'maisa is permitted, only the king has the limitation. And the truth is, it actually makes a lot of sense, because since the king is going to be engaging in strategic marriages, b'pashtos, so therefore there's a real concern about marrying people who are going to bring the wrong influences into his home. Incredible. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Ksiv. So Rabbi Yehuda went ahead and contrasted two psukim. One hand it says, Vahi v'shalom arbaim elef Arvos Susan Merkavto. It said that Shlomo Melech had 40,000 stables for the horses for riding. Shlomo Arbas Alofim Arvos Susim. And then it said he had, right? Then it said he had 400,000 horses. So Haketzad Im Arboim Elef Itztablos Hayu Kol Echad Ve'echad Hayu Bo Dalat Alofim Arvos Susim. Then Dalat Alofim Itztablos Hayu Kol Echad Ve'echad Hayu Bo Arboim Elef Arvos Susim. Bottom line, Shlomo Melech had a lot of horses. That's the takeaway. In other words, the Gemara is just saying it's not clear. Are we talking about stables or rows of stables? So obviously, again, depending on that, we'll determine the number of horses Shlomo Melech had. But either way, giving us an insight into the dramatic wealth of Shlomo Melech. Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi Ksiv, we'll say first of the widest lines. Rabbi Yitzchak contrasted two psukim. Ein kesef nechshav b'nei Shlomo l'me'uma. Money, there was so much wealth in the days of Shlomo Melech that money, literally, again, it counted for nothing. Money was almost like valueless. Uksiv, Vayiten Shlomo Sakesem Yerushalayim Ka'avanim. Another pasuk that Shlomo Melech dispensed money in Yerushalayim like stones. Now, even though that pasuk says money flowed like stones, but stones still have a value. So the psukim are a little bit contradictory. First pasuk says that money flowed like it had no value. Then the second pasuk said it had a value like stones. Which one is it? Okashia. Kan kodem shnasa shlomas bas paro. Kan la'achar shnasa shlomas bas paro. So both say this is incredible. This introduces us to another sugya here. So the Gemara says like this. Shlomo Melech made a mistake in that he married too many women. And amongst those women who were too many women is Bas Paro Paro. That was a strategic marriage to align the two kingdoms. Bas Paro introduced idolatry into the home of Shlomo, and Shlomo Melech did not stop it. And it was really the marriage to Bas Shlomo that really became, to Bas Paro, that became the undoing of Shlomo HaMelech. That began a downward spiral. And remember again, then you have all these stories linked together. He marries Bas Paro. There's idolatry now, literally in the home of Shlomo HaMelech. There's a story with Ashvadai. Shlomo loses his footing. Even though Shlomo passes the crown down to his son Rechavam, but remember it's during Rechavam's days that the monarchy is split into Malchus Yisrael and Malchus Yudah. And really all of this traces itself back to this deleterious marriage with Bas Paro, the idolatry that came with it. So the Gemara says, before Shlomo married Bas Shlomo, there was such tremendous prosperity that money flowed, like money was like valueless. That's how much money there was. After he married Bas Shlomo, there was still prosperity, but money was like stones. Things changed. Rabbi says, incredible Gemara. Am Rabbi Yitzchak. B'shah shenosa Shlomo Bas Paro. When Shlomo Melech married Bas Paro, Yarad Gavriel v'no'atz kanabiyam. The Malach Gavriel came and he literally put a reed in the sea. V'hela sirton, and what happened? And the reed began to collect sediment. V'alav nivna krach gadol sheberomi. And that landmass ultimately became Rome. So Rabbi say, isn't that incredible? That what is this saying? Shlomo HaMelech's marriage to Bas Paro, it created a negative trajectory for Klal Yisrael. And that negative trajectory ultimately created Rome, the arch enemy of Klal Yisrael. It was such an overwhelming. Shlomo HaMelech thought he was just, forging a strategic alliance. but sometimes people could be too smart for their own good. And Shlomo did something, and the ripple effect of his actions ultimately created Rome. So many times in life, we act and we think that we act in a silo, or we act, just like in a self-contained way, and we don't think about the effects that our actions can have on others, either presently or, again, prospectively as well. But it is important to know that every action we engage in has a ripple effect. And by the way, this is good and bad. Chas v'shalom, we commit averos, we never know the ripple effects that those can have. But on the flip side, on the positive side, we commit mitzvos. So I say, okay, mitzvah is very nice. You never know the ripple effect that a mitzvah can have. Am Rabbi Yitzchak. Why did the Torah in general not reveal reasons for mitzvos? Because the Torah revealed two mitzvos. The Torah revealed the reasons for two mitzvos, not more than two, but two mitzvos. And the greatest amongst men, Shlomo HaMelech, thought he was smart enough to circumvent the reasons, and he failed. Ksiv, lo yarba lo nashim. So the pasuk says, a king shouldn't have too many wives, and the Torah says why? So that they should not turn his heart to idolatry. Amar Shlomo, ani arba v'lo aser. Shlomo says, don't worry about me. I got this. I can marry as many women as I want. Nothing bad is going to happen. And sure enough, Ksiv, v'ahila ziknas Shlomo nashav hitu es levavo. And sure enough, again, Shlomo gets old, and he's unable to check the influences in his home, and his wives are bringing avodah zarah mamish into the palace, into the Davidic palace. Uksiv lo yarba lo susim. The pasuk says the king shouldn't have too many horses. Why? And again, here the Torah says because we don't want the Jews to go back to Mitzrayim. Egypt was like the place to be, the place to go to for horses. So we're concerned if the king has too many horses, they're going to end up going back to Egypt. Shlomo says, don't worry about me. I'll have plenty of horses, and don't worry, I'm not taking anyone back to Egypt. Chavra, don't worry about it. And sure enough, what happened? Shlomo's horses came from Egypt, right? And they ended up again going back to Egypt for the sake of commerce. So you see over here something really amazing, which is, let's say, the Rebbe Shalom knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And sometimes, we find it a little bit frustrating that the Torah doesn't give reasons for things. I want to understand everything. And Chash Baruch Hu understands, and again, we're supposed to try to understand things. But it's also important to understand that sometimes the reasons are not given by design. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu knows human nature, and human nature is that when you think you understand something, you think that you could also manipulate the reasoning, that the reasoning doesn't apply to you. Shlomo Melech says, the Torah says, king, don't marry too many women, they're going to turn your heart. So this is not me, I'm Shlomo Melech. I'm impervious to idolatry. Sure enough, idolatry. Don't have too many horses, you're going to go down to Egypt. Not me, I won't go down to Egypt. Sure enough, down in Egypt. So Kadosh Baruch Hu understands, this is so incredibly important. The Ribono Shel Olam knows us better than we know ourselves. And sometimes the avoda of a yid is to trust the system. Sometimes we have a little bit of gaiva because, Kadosh Baruch Hu created us as thinking and thoughtful and rational beings. And we think to ourselves, if I don't understand it, then it doesn't make sense. Everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to us and commands us to do makes sense. Sometimes the Ribono Shel Olam doesn't want us to understand it because he understands that then we may use the gift of intellect to manipulate circumstances in a way that Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to happen. Sometimes the Ribono Shel Olam says, I love you, I got you, just trust the system. Because sometimes when we understand too much, that's when we tend to get ourselves into a lot of trouble. I have to say, it's chus to learn with all of you today. Looking forward to seeing everyone in person on Wednesday. Am Yisroel. Have a wonderful day.